It is good to be here and worship with you, and really excited today. We've decided for this message series that we're going to round up as many guys named Josh to share testimonies with you. And so last week, Josh Entrigan shared, and this week Josh Streit's going to come share. And I just, go ahead and come on down, brother, and grateful. He had shared with me some time ago some of the ways that God had kind of worked in his life and brought him new insight and understanding. And as this series was coming, offered to kind of share some of that. And so a different journey, a unique journey, but I think what he's got to share is going to be an encouragement to some and maybe spark some new ideas in your minds as well. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Blaine. Lindsay's asked me in the past why I don't necessarily worship all the time the way everybody else does. Well, I have a lot of reasons for that, but I think that's because this is my worship. What I'm going to go through here today, what I'm going to say to you today, and I've thought about this for literally 13 years, and I apologize. I have a confession. I've kept this mostly to myself. Something happened to me or through me, and I don't know what the right description is, but this definitely happened. It happened the way I'm going to tell you. It happened with the topics that I'm going to tell you. They make no sense. I admit that right away. But I think once they are all stacked together, they made sense to me. And I think that sort of revelation is what I want to share. It's like the end of the story is the point. But I also have to confess, I don't know if you noticed, but Joshua, we have our own book in the Bible. Have you noticed that? You have your book? No? No. We've got ours. Okay, great. Okay,
Josh will be preaching the whole sermon today. I'm just going to sit here in my suit and listen.
So one of the things, thank you, Jody, is careful what you ask for. Okay? Be real careful. Joshua in Hebrew means God is deliverance. Ooh, that's heavy. But Streit in German means strife or argumentative. And that's maybe why I love irony, because that's how I'm up here. And maybe it means that God is delivered through a good argument. Maybe. I don't know. But it's definitely probably why Joshua was a general. And he was the guy that led them into Canaan, and not Moses. It was the deliverer, whose name means deliverance, was the guy. I didn't even think about saying that to you. I was sitting right over there just a moment ago, and I thought I'd share that. This is ironic. I was on an airplane in February of 2013. It was going to Paterson, New Jersey, and you have to take 2 airplanes from Columbus, Ohio, because when you leave Columbus, Ohio, you cannot just take 1 airplane. You must take more than one. And that's generally the rule, with the exception of a handful of cities. Anyway, and I had this feeling, and I'd already been thinking about some stuff, and I was thinking about how do I stitch these ideas together? I don't know, but for whatever reason, that day, that morning on that airplane, I felt kind of an energy or an urgency or something or inspiration. I don't know what the right word is, but I'd pick out a notebook and start writing this down. That's all I knew. And the first 3 words I wrote down were thoughts on omnipotence, because that's an easy topic to describe, right? But I was really also thinking about omnipresence, because they're kind of synonymous to me. It's like you're all powerful, so you can be everywhere. But I wanted to try to say how. We come in here, we talk a lot about what and why. What's the Bible say? What does it mean? Why do things happen? What do I do? Why did Jesus? That's what we talk about. Do you ever thought about asking how? How's it work? Walk me through it. You can go to the next slide. So we're here to talk about secular humanism. Well, they don't believe anything that they can't reason through or describe or touch and feel and taste and all that stuff. Well, the irony of that is, did you ever think about asking? Because I'm pretty sure he just said, ask and it'll be given to you. So you want the answer? Ask. I think the variable is that, are you ready for the answer? Careful what you ask for. What if the answer means that, I have to be honest about the answer? I think that's the variable in all of us. And I have to be honest, I kept this inside of myself. And Blaine said, you got 10 minutes. And I said, brother, I need 30. I'm trying to go as fast as I can here. But I think I don't believe in coincidence. Coincidences do not exist. Irony exists, absolutely. Irony is often funny. I think God is funny. God is funny through irony. And so here I am today. But there's no coincidence that I'm here. Coincidences doesn't exist. You either know something or you don't. That's the difference there. Something happened, you didn't know why. You say, it's a coincidence. No, you just didn't know why. So I want to walk through a little bit today why I think omnipotence is not only real, but omnipresence is real, and I'm going to try to describe what I think is how. And of course, I started with sharks. It was literally the first thing I wrote down. I started describing this thing about sharks, and it makes no sense. I told you this made no sense. But if you look at those little black dots on the end of a shark's nose, those are called the ampullae of Lorenzini, some guy's name who discovered them. And they are the gland receptors on its nose of a shark that allow it to literally feel electricity through the water so it knows where its prey is. A shark can feel electricity, not just electricity, specific electricity. Oh, that's a fish. I want to go there. It can feel it. Like a Wi-Fi signal through how many signals are in this room right now? We have LiDAR, sonar, radar, whatever. This thing is hundreds of millions of years old and could feel invisible electrical signals moving through matter that say, I should go over there and eat. That's amazing. And that's always been there. And that's this theme of like, it's always been there. That's going to recur here, okay? I think this is incredible. Let's go to the next one. Then there's laminin. Anybody know what laminin is? Raise your hand if you know what it is. Okay, couple, right? For those of you who don't know, surprise, it's a protein molecule in all of your connective tissue. Your connective tissue do what? They connect you. They hold you together. Ligaments, joints, tendons, bones, all of it. The thing holding in you in your current shape is, at the end of the day, laminin, and it's in that shape. Are there coincidences? Nope. And we look backwards with science. Science only goes backwards. It is not prospective. So we had to be this many, eons old to invent an electron microscope, not a light-based microscope, one that sends electrons off of things, bounces back, shows us the picture, so we could see a single molecule of a cross-shaped thing literally holding us together. If you turned it on its side, it would look like a sword. In the book of Revelation, the tongue of the mouth of the Son of Man is described as a sword, a weapon. Something powerful. I get a little worked up when I think about it. Apologize in advance, I get worked up easy. But on this subject, I get worked up a lot. There's no irony. There's irony. This is it. It's not a coincidence. Then there's light. I'm fascinated by light. It's amazing. The way you see me right now is light. These lights, light. I reflect certain wavelengths. Those go into your eyes see that, they focus it, transmits it into an electrical signal. What is electricity when you look at it? It's literally called lightning. It's how you hear me, right? I vibrate molecules in the air. They go to your ear. Your eardrum vibrates. It's mechanical motion. Mechanical motion goes into electricity again. That electrical signal is a specific one. It means these words. These electrical signals mean these words. These words have meaning, and you understand what I'm saying. And it's all made possible through bits of light. When you walk outside of this church today, you're going to squint because it's glaring, the difference between here and out there, and you're going to be basking in light. And what you may not be thinking about as you squint is that light and matter are the same. It's a particle and energy at the same time. By the way, that's a photo over the Dead Sea. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Took that last summer. It's very hot there. There are no plants, just rocks. Anyway, they're the same thing. The first words of God in the Bible are, let there be light. Light is the first energy described in the Bible. Energy, fast forward up to now, in the 20th century, kind of like now, some guy named Einstein, a Jew, ironically, decided to say, let's take all this understanding, distill it down into 3 letters and 1 number. E, energy, equals matter, M, if you just speed it up to the speed of light squared, C. So the difference between energy, light, and you, because you're made of matter, is one thing, speed. You're made of matter that's been temporarily slowed down into that shape, held together by a cross. The law of conservation of energy and matter says that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It only changes forms. It cannot be created nor destroyed, but it exists. How? I don't know. Something must have come from something else. That's causality. Blaine mentioned it last week. We know that through logic, and you've been temporarily slowed down, and at some point you're going to die, and at that point, my bet is if you're just honest about our secular humanistic observation of life through reasoning, is that you're going to change form. And I bet changing form, my bet is that you speed back up. And you go back to light. And what is light? Light is more than your physical matter. Light is energy and matter at the same time. And that's what all of this came from. That blows my mind. Let's go to the next slide. I'm this many years old. I don't know if you can play that on a loop. This many years old, 48, almost 49, and it is a travesty of our educational system that this isn't taught over and over again. Yeah, I don't know if you can click back and replay that. That's a little clip from a YouTube video. That is a human egg at the point of conception. Now, as you might know, sperm cell goes into egg, solidifies its cell membrane, keeps out the rest of the sperm cells. Did you know that zinc is involved? And zinc gives off a flash of light at the moment of conception? What? How's this not taught? This is biology. They took a video of it. There it is. I can't unsee it. I can't unknow it. That's the thing about knowledge. Once it's in there, it can't get back out. And now you know it. And that let there be light is like saying, let there be life. And Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. I'm the way, the truth, and the... Say it. Life. And light and life are the same thing, because light is energy and matter at the same time. They are the same thing. They have always been the same thing. We just couldn't take a video of it until now. Blows my mind. So anyway, I'm on the plane and I'm like this, and it's pen to paper, right? I'm not typing, old-fashioned, analog, as fast as I can, get off the plane, get back on another plane, right. I go 2 plane rides. I'm still floating. We're only halfway through this, and I get done, and the document that's done takes 15 minutes to read straight through. This is just like a single draft essay. This is true. I changed almost nothing from it happened to me or through me. I don't know which. Maybe it's 2 things at the same time. Catch a theme here. Let's go on to the next one. Why do we know all this? Logic. Where does logic come from? By the way, the other theme here, and Blaine mentioned this, C.S. Lewis is awesome. Liar, lunatic, or Lord. Well, how about Lorenzini, laminin, logic, light? You catching a theme? I didn't realize this until way, 13 years later. And then here it is, and they're all L words. And logic comes from the observation of everything around us. This comes from this. This is this thing. This is not that thing. And Aristotle wrote that very simply, A is A. That means A cannot be B, B cannot be C. A comes from something. We don't know what it is. Aristotle forgot to write about that part. That's ironic. I love irony. But that's how we get reason. Reason gives us science. Science is our retrospective tool. And that leads me to the next one. Image. We are created in God's image, right? What's an image? An image is a copy. What's a copy? Copy is something that looks a lot like the other thing because it has the same structure, but structure gives us function. Function is how we work. That means how I work has to be consistent with, maybe even look like, I don't know, but certainly be compatible with the thing from which it came. You can't have a thing, make another thing, and that second thing is then incompatible with the thing that came before it. So children, we're compatible. We have to be, maybe despite your resistance. But we're children of God, right? So we have to be compatible despite our resistance. But then let's look at this thing, this body. How does it work? Do you know how many cells are in your body? Take a guess. Never mind. It's 35 to 40 trillion cells are in your body that are connected with the peripheral nervous system back to a central nervous system, the heart of which is your brain. Your brain, we already covered this, runs on what? Light. How many of those cells is your brain ignorant of? None. 0. How many people are on earth? 7.5 billion. So could this thing that created us in our image be compatible with us and keep track of 7.5 billion things at the same time? Sounds easy compared to how your body already works, already functions. It's simple. In fact, and this was my light bulb, I'm going to land this plane. Ironically, I didn't realize I was going to say that. On the next slide. All that has to happen for all of this to work, for omnipotence to be a thing, to not be this thing that I've always thought of, which is like God is out there and the angels are out there and we're down here and we somehow have to get there to there. And I don't know how that works. No, that was wrong. That's what I realized. That was wrong. We exist inside of God. Existence exists within God. Omnipotence was accomplished at the beginning of time, what we know is time. And all we have to do is, what did Jesus say? Abide in him. And I didn't realize, this isn't in the essay. I didn't realize this till 2 days ago. Why does a thought happen? I do not know, but I'm sitting there and I'm putting these slides together and the thought popped in my head, abide in me. That's interesting. Let me look that up. Where's that come from? John 15, and there is the Greek word meno, staring me back in the face on the screen, and it means to remain. To stay. That means you start out in the right place, and all you got to do is stay there. We exist in him. That's how omnipotence is accomplished. That's how it works. And Jesus says, please stay. Stay. That's all you got to do. And that's the most amazing thing about Jesus. And you read the scriptures and he takes this super complex thing, says it in Aramaic, which gets translated to Greek, and then we translate it to English, and it just takes all that complexity and he says, you know what? Just be nice. Can you be nice? Is that hard? Is it hard to do? Could you be nice and maybe stay? Be nice, stay, 3 words. That's it. And just in case you forget, and now you can't unknow it. Now you've seen it, you've heard me. I'm ranting and raving up here about this cross-shaped molecule holding you together. It was stitched literally into your fibers, actual collagen fibers, holding you together in the shape of a cross. It happens to be the same thing on which Jesus died before he came back to say, hello, remember me? Except I don't think it was said that way. It's not like, how remember me, like an old high school friend. I think it said, remember me. It's a commandment. It's not a question. It's not a question of whether or not. You can't avoid this. It's in you from the moment of your inception, your birth. It's already there, and you can't separate from it. And to me, that's the take-home message. There's nothing you can do to separate yourself from the existence in which you already abide, in which you reside. That means everything that's ever been good, that's ever happened to you, was already there. You didn't have to do anything to make it happen. You just had to get up. You walk out that church, squint in that light, and realize you're basking in the very thing that allows you to perceive the light, to breathe, to be alive, to know, to praise. And that's why you throw up your hands. There's nothing else for you to do. You can't do anything else. It's been done. And that's why it's a commandment. Sorry, I know it went long, but there it is.
Thank you, brother. All right. So today's topic is secular humanism. What in the world is that? One of the best summary descriptions I came across was in a book called Faithfully Different, which I'd recommend, by Natasha Crane, a Christian apologist. She just describes it as, this is the air we breathe. I would say it this way. If you come across somebody and they say, well, I'm not a Christian, maybe I'm spiritual, I don't need God, they're probably fall into the camp of secular humanists. And so atheists, secular humanists, some overlap, but not always necessarily the same. But here's Natasha Crane's 4 kind of foundational principles or kind of mantras of secular humanism. This is the world in which we live right now. Number 1, feelings are the ultimate guide. Happiness is the ultimate goal. Judging is the ultimate sin. And God is the ultimate guess. If you are truly a kind of atheistic secular humanist, then the last one you'd have to tweak to say God is the ultimate lie rather than the ultimate guess. If you want to go to a good Wikipedia definition, here's how they define it. A philosophy belief system or life stance that embraces human reason, logic, secular ethics, and philosophical naturalism, while specifically rejecting religious dogma, supernaturalism, and superstition as the basis of morality and decision-making. I do have to point out the irony that secular humanists are against dogma that is religious in nature, but they are for dogma that is secular humanist in nature. Do you see the kind of the irony in that? You'll see that over and over again when you're kind of really reflecting on this topic in deep ways. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to offer kind of three broad critiques of secular humanism. And again, each week in the series, we're not going to be exhaustive, but three broad critiques that I think are really relevant for us. And then I'm going to offer an alternative of kind of what are the benefits in contrast to a biblical worldview. So the first critique, kind of to lead into it, to quote kind of the Wikipedia explanation of secular humanism, they make the point I want to get at with the last sentence of their description. It says this, that secular humanism posits that human beings are capable of being ethical and moral without religion or belief in a deity. Now, this is really critical to understand. And something that, as Christians, if you're engaged in dialogue or debate with somebody who's in the secular humanist camp, I think that we have to be really quick to affirm that there are many people who are atheists or secular humanists that are, in fact, very moral and ethical people. Moral and ethical, and in fact, are often doing a lot of good in the world and might have more integrity than somebody who's standing up all the time proclaiming that they're a follower of Jesus. So we need to be ready and willing to acknowledge that. But here's the challenge. A secular humanist can be moral and ethical, but their worldview, this foundational, purely naturalistic worldview, does not naturally lead in the direction of morality and ethical behavior, right? So you can be, yes, but there's no reason or cause to justify your morality or your particular persuasion of what you believe to be ethical. See, to get into that realm is going beyond what you can study under a microscope. It's going beyond the realm of science, what is verifiable, into the realm of philosophy or the realm of religion. And so, while a secular humanist can be moral and ethical and care about justice and doing good things in the world, the key thing you want to hear is that it's logically inconsistent to say that they must be or that they necessarily will be. And so here's critique number one, that secular humanism is a logically inconsistent worldview and therefore is not worthy of our allegiance. Now, one of the things you've got to wrestle with is that a lot of the critique of a biblical Christian worldview is based on kind of sound bites that are really common in our culture, but they are offered by people who have not really done their homework. They haven't really looked at the science, or they haven't really explored what the basis of a biblical worldview might be. And so what I'm suggesting is if you do those things, if you do the work of really exploring these different worldviews, you will discover that there is logical inconsistency in a worldview that is purely secular and humanistic. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. So this is the Amsterdam Declaration of 22. You can Google it and look it up. This was put together by the Humanists International Group, all right? And so this is an official statement of humanists, and part of the statement says this: we affirm the worth and dignity of the individual and the right of every human to the greatest possible freedom and fullest possible development compatible with the rights of others. To these ends, we support peace, democracy, the rule of law, and universal legal human rights. Now, does anybody think those are bad ideas? I don't. Those are worthy and noble ideas, but when I read that, I ask the question, But why? On what basis are we making these claims? If we are animals who all evolved from the same primordial soup, if we're just biologically the fruit of what we are today, if we all have evolved through natural selection, if it's just the physical material world, if that's all there is and that's all that matters and that's all we came from, then on what basis can we even talk about things like worth and dignity of people? Like what is the logical reason to claim that a person, that all people have worth and dignity? I mean, you could kind of say it bluntly like this, that these ideas of worth, dignity, morality, human rights, these are not ideas that you that you study under a microscope, right? So they can't be verified. These concepts go beyond that. Now, let me be really clear. I believe that secular humanists are 100% accurate in affirming the worth and dignity of all people. I'm a fan. What I'm saying is it's simply not logically consistent with a purely naturalistic worldview. How do we get to that place of claiming the worth and dignity of all people from a natural perspective? And so I would say that even when you read the statements from humanists and these claims about worth and dignity, all those things, there's no logical basis for it. But I would say, when I read it, I think it's further evidence of this universal moral law that God's wired into our being. And they're trying to make a case for it because within themselves, they know there's right and there's wrong. There's good and there's evil. And they're trying to make a case, but I will just tell you, the case is not intellectually compelling, and it is not logically consistent. That leads us to critique number 2. Making the self God is Satan's oldest and most destructive tactic. Now, this is really critical, and so the secular humanist, there is authority. But what the secular humanist will deny vehemently is that there is an external, objective authority that we would refer to as God. And so, but everybody decides who and what is going to have authority in our lives, right? Nobody lives without authority. The secular humanist is vying for, I want that authority to reside within myself. And so we can go all the way back to the garden in Genesis chapter 3. Listen to how it unfolded there. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die." "You will not certainly die," the serpent said to the woman, "for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So the appeal at the heart of secular humanism is you don't need God to be good. You don't need God to tell you what you can and can't do. If you want that tree, eat it. If it looks good, take a bite, right? And you don't need God prescribing what you can and cannot do. The claim here that we don't need God to be moral and good people, if we embrace that, then what we have to grapple with is, what are the logical implications of that statement? So secular humanism says there's no external objective standard. There's no God, and we don't need it, okay? But if there's no external objective standard, then how do we decide between right and wrong, good and evil? The only option left is, right? I am my own God. Or we can appeal to reason or to science or what is good for the common good. But all of those things get tripped up, and the third critique we'll get to in a moment. So what I want you to hear is everybody's choosing a God. Secular humanist says you don't need this external objective God outside of you. You've got what it takes to know right and wrong, good and evil, okay? But this is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. It's been a while ago, I don't know, it was a year or so ago, there was a big uproar locally because the Satanic Temple was starting a group in Marysville. Do you remember this? And I actually mentioned it at the time because lots of Christians were in an uproar about it. And if you go to the Satanic Temple website, what you'll find is not like we're going to make child sacrifices to evil. What you will find, I encourage you to go look at it, the Satanic Temple website is secular humanism, explicit. I mean, you read there, you could put the Amsterdam Declaration alongside the Satanic Temple's principles, guiding principles, and they're nearly identical. And so what I would say is that the label Satanic Temple, it's actually a little bit for shock value on their part, but it is actually, ironically, a very accurate name to call a group that wants to promote and advance the claims of secular humanism. It is really appropriate to call that group the Satanic Temple, because this is one of Satan's oldest tricks. If he can get us to abandon the objective external reality of God who determines right and wrong and moral and good and evil, if we can abandon that, and if we can trust in our own human capacity to determine right and wrong and good and evil, then Satan is winning the battle right there. Because we are saying that we will be those who determine what is true and right and wrong. Now that leads to the third critique. Secular humanism leads down the slippery slope and dangerous slope of moral relativism. Now, it doesn't take a lot of leaps to put these two, kind of connect the dots in this. But when there is no external, objective basis for truth and morality, the unavoidable outcome is that everything is up for grabs. Truth is a moving target. Morality is a moving target. Remember the primary mantras, right? That feelings are the ultimate guide, happiness is the ultimate goal, judging the ultimate sin, God is the ultimate guess or lie. When these things define our worldview, the objective basis, the determination of truth and morality is always on the move. In the Amsterdam Declaration, the little quote that I shared before, it said something that is a great example of this. So it named that everybody, they believe in the greatest possible freedom for everybody. And then they have the tag, as long as it doesn't encroach upon somebody else's well-being. But what they don't do in the Amsterdam Declaration or anywhere else is, how do we sort out when your greatest possible freedom is at odds with my greatest possible freedom? You can't judge mine as wrong, and I can't judge yours as wrong, right? So how do we sort that out? And what if the things that are at stake are really significant, important moral issues? How do we determine the difference? Because we have to hold on to this value of everybody gets the greatest possible freedom, but who determines the limits of that, or who arbitrates when they conflict, is an unknown. A great historical example. Adolf Hitler thought he was exercising his freedom to the greatest possible limit for the good of humanity. He believed it was for the good of humanity, and him exercising his greatest possible freedom led to the genocide of the Jews and many others. Now, a secular humanist, many, I'll give the benefit of the doubt, many would be outraged at the atrocities of genocide perpetrated by Hitler. Many would be. But I would say there is no logical basis to be outraged other than your personal opinion of what morality is and what good and evil is different than his. Do we see the contrast there? We could give a million more examples along those lines, but we're looking at if the determining factor for what is true and right and good rests within ourselves, and how, even if we appeal to reason and the common good, there's still going to be disagreements. There's still no objective external standard for us to arbitrate all of those differences. And so moral relativism is an unavoidable consequence, and then it just becomes a debate against different personal opinions of what is good and what is best. One of the things we'll circle back to later in the series is a lot of this, when we get into progressive Christianity, comes down to how we determine who and what is authoritative in our lives. Who has the authority to determine those things? How do we come to those conclusions? John Streit, this is in the book Apologetics for an Ever-Changing Culture, looking at the landscape of secular humanism and what are the consequences. He names these 4 catastrophic losses that follow. Number 1, the loss of truth, because now we're to your truth and my truth. And who's to say that your truth is right or wrong compared to my truth? Loss of trust, loss of meaning, and loss of identity. It's very interesting to me, in researching for this, came across a secular humanist who was writing an essay about what are the weaknesses of secular humanism. And in fact, he actually identified almost these identical 4 things here. So he, even as a secular humanist, was able to acknowledge there are some problems and some limitations of this worldview. And then he goes on to provide explanations that are very much not compelling. So as our culture, this is important to realize, as our culture becomes increasingly secular humanistic, that also means increasingly anti-God and anti-Christian. It's right there in the definition. We don't need God. We don't want God, right? We're against anything that speaks of or looks like religious dogma. As our culture moves in this direction, there's this kind of unmooring from anything that is solid and substantial to keep our bearings in the world in which we live. Secular humanists believe that we can toss out all of the God talk, all of the God standards, and that we'll be okay. That we can all just do our best to be good people and to make the world a better place. How's that experiment going? Anybody watch the news this week? Anybody scroll through some news story? That's a failed experiment. Humanity left to ourselves are not consistently moving the world in the direction of becoming more just and good and beautiful. Now, a biblical worldview provides an alternative that addresses all of those concerns and points us in a more hopeful direction. And so here's just kind of a foundational idea that when we embrace objective truth and moral authority in Jesus and in his revealed word, it leads to flourishing and freedom and life. When we reject it, when we say we don't need that, we're good on our own, when we reject that authority, it leads to destruction. It leads to chaos. It leads to confusion. It leads to bondage. It leads to things that, despite secular humanism's appeal to reason, it leads to things that defy reason. Because we use reason to prop up positions that otherwise don't make sense, and we call it moral, we call it good. Jesus speaks very directly to this good news of the gospel. I'm going to share a little bit out of John chapter 8. So Jesus is speaking to some Jews here, and he says, John 8, 31 and 32, to the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, I believe off the top of my head that the translation there is the word abide or remain. That if you hold to my teaching, I'll have to double check, but just off the top of my head, I think it is. If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. In this passage, Jesus is debating some religious leaders who wanted to have a corner on the market of what is true. And Jesus came on the scene saying, you have skewed what was revealed to you through the old covenant, and you're missing the boat. And Jesus comes on the scene saying, no, that's not true, this is true. And so Jesus speaks with a new authority, and he's telling them that if you want to know the truth and live in the truth, then you're going to have to abandon the authority of yourself and the religious traditions that you have created, and you're going to have to submit to my authority to really live and walk in the truth. He goes on in John 8, 42 to 45. Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I have come here from God. I have not come on my own, God sent me. Skipping to verse 44. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Yet because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. This passage really gets at when we're talking about truth, the minute we abandon some foundational objective basis for truth in Christ and his revelation, the minute we concede that there's your truth and my truth and his truth and her truth, and who can judge any of them? When we abandon truth, we are entering into a place of deception. And Jesus has some pretty harsh words there, right? Pretty harsh words of the dangers of abandoning truth. I'm going to wrap up with the contrast of these 4 catastrophic losses that I named a minute ago. When we choose to trust Jesus, submit our lives to his authority, and walk in his ways, we get the opposite of those 4 catastrophic losses. So instead of the loss of truth, we can rest with certainty that truth can be known most fully in Jesus, in his revelation. We have something solid to stand upon. I read this one description of secular humanism wants to plant their feet firmly on a cloud. It was a good mental picture. Like, we're going to stand our ground here, but floating in the middle of thin air with nothing firm to stand upon. Instead of the loss of trust, we discover that trusting Jesus leads to flourishing in life and in relationships. John 10:10 describes, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I, Jesus, have come that they may have life and have it to the full. This is maybe, I think it's accurate. I was a bit shaken this week reading a story of a clergy colleague who, because he's not planted his feet firmly on the truth revealed in Jesus, has chosen to believe some things that aren't grounded in the authority of Scripture, and in doing that has made some decisions that are destroying covenant relationships in his life. And I read it. It was all out on social media this week, and my heart just broke. Because I see the tragedy that comes when we abandon truth, and how the next step behind it is we become people who are not trustworthy. Because I'm I'm going to do what's best for me, what makes me happy, what feels good to me. Don't tell me I have to do anything that would make you happy, right? In contrast, when we follow Jesus, we become trustworthy people. We experience a depth of trust in our relationship with God, and we become trustworthy people in relationships with others. We also discover that following Jesus gives ultimate meaning to life now and eternally. This is a real struggle if you want to hold on to a secular humanistic worldview. Now, here's the thing. I know I've had so many conversations with secular humanists that argue for morality and ethics and doing good in the world, and many of them are doing lots of good things because they're looking for meaning. And I get it, and that makes sense, but it's logically inconsistent. If you're just the result of naturalistic selection and evolution, and when you die, you just die. There's no light. There's no going back to light. You're just dead, right? That's it. End of story. Then, if I was going to be a secular humanist, I would, go all in. Like, do whatever you want. Because there's no accountability. There's no eternal consequences. There's no eternity. It's just the material world, right? And so secular humanists who are trying to find meaning and purpose by doing good, to me, it exposes these desires that God has planted in our hearts, that we don't want to live for ourselves. There's something that we know that's not right, that's not good, it's not fulfilling, right? But when we follow Jesus, we find meaning and purpose in this life, and it doesn't stop. It gets better. Like, this is the prologue to the beginning of the rest of the story that is grand and glorious and eternal. You take the most beautiful sight that you've ever seen in God's creation, and then imagine removing all the sin, brokenness, death, dying, and being in that spot again, and the beauty would be so much that it would be overwhelming. We couldn't even contain it. But we'll be able to do it. We'll be able to experience that when we enter into this eternal realm, right? Last one, instead of a loss of identity, we find who we really are. Trusting in Jesus makes us new creations with a new identity. And so I don't have to find my identity in the people and things of this world, what I can accomplish. I know who I am, and I can live with confidence and love and selflessness out of that identity. All right, I've went a little long. We're going to wrap up here, so if you want to come, a couple last comments here. If you're somebody who is not like solidly rooted in a relationship with Christ and not a biblical worldview, and I'll say this as a side note, if you're new to faith and new to church, then your worldview, kind of how you really see life and the world and how you function, is probably more secular humanist than it is biblical worldview. That's natural. But here's what I would encourage you. If you're not all there, I love this. Dallas Willard is a philosopher, theologian. He used to say this all the time. Maybe just try these things on a little bit. Just give it, test it out a little bit. Try out these foundational beliefs. Lean in and explore a little bit. I feel like the other Josh that spoke last week, he kind of took that approach in his journey of testing it out a little bit, trying out in community. And if you're willing to honestly engage in that process, I trust that God will continue to shine some light in your journey and lead you in a way that leads you to truth, into freedom, and to flourishing. Last thing, this is just from a personal devotion I'm reading this week by E. Stanley Jones. And he's sharing this theme over and over again. It's not just that following Jesus or the Bible, it's not just that these things are true. It's that when we are outside of Christ, when we are rejecting that, it doesn't work. Or you could say that it does work to produce the only thing that it can produce. Outside of Christ, you get disintegration. get chaos, you get brokenness, you get anxiety, you get fear. That's what you get in a worldview that rejects God. But when we are in Christ, when we choose to abide in him, we get life, get peace, you get joy. You get relationships that are not perfect, but there's something solid that we can stand upon to move toward flourishing. I would invite you. What does it look like to lean in to the invitation of Jesus? And again, ironically, we'll close with the song Abide. Stay, remain, abide in him, and find life. Jesus, would you minister to us even as we sing, even as the conversations continue after this time? Help us to engage with one another full of grace and truth. Help us to be open to you, speaking to us, ministering to us, full of grace and truth, we pray. In the name of Jesus.